In pursuit of being around more like-minded people at the time in 1965, our mother moved us to Carmel, California. She was enamored by the pictures in the magazines of Caramel by the sea and the pure white sand on the beach, and she already had some friends from her church that lived there, so they could show us around. She answered an ad in the paper for this big, beautiful house owned by this lady who was renting her home for a year or so while she traveled abroad. When we arrived at her house, the lady told our mother that she just wasn't interested in renting her fully furnished, beautiful home filled with lavish things to someone with children. But there we were before her. She was so charmed by our mother and blown away by how incredibly well behaved all 6 of us were that something inside her shifted. She said that she felt overwhelmed by the feeling that the house needed children's laughter. That lady not only rented her home to our mother while she was away, but she also dropped the price of the rent 3 times lower than it was posted. We lived there a little over a year. Eventually, our mother found out through a friend of a friend, with whom was in real estate, that there was a house that offered an incredible deal that she could not refuse. It was a 3-level house with an attic, and the price was perfect. Nothing down. She was to start paying the mortgage, and the house was hers. Mum was so excited. This was the first house that she was able to own by herself, so she didn't even question why it was so cheap, or why it was such a great deal. She just marked it off as being another blessing. I guess you would consider the house being a townhouse, very tall and slim. There was a mostly finished basement that became our mother's bedroom, and of course I slept in her bed as well. Then the kitchen and living room on the next level up. Above that were 2 bedrooms, one for my brother, and the other one was for my eldest sister, Linda, and sister Melanie. The attic was where my other 2 sisters, Charity and Rachel, stayed, and strangely the staircase and door to the attic were in my brother's room. I have no memory of these events, so after separately interviewing 3 of my siblings and what I was told by my mother and elder sister before they passed, this is what they recall. Things were alright for the first few weeks, but then everyone in the house started experiencing signs of something being off. Items disappearing when you knew they were right there, hearing their names being called out, noises like footsteps running up and down the stairs, and my siblings were being pitted against each other. Our mother was so tired after work that a lot of this didn't get brought up to her until things were being thrown along with terrifying visits in their bedrooms. My brother, with the door in the attic, said he didn't know why, but the attic was always 60 degrees even during that hot summer. He said that one night the family cat was sleeping on his bed, and he was just at that stage of falling asleep when the cat jumped up and arched his back and hissed. He looked in the direction the cat was looking, and down the steps from the top was a dark, floating blob. He said that he ran downstairs, and it followed him almost on his heels. Our mother loved hanging pictures down the staircases in the hall, and he said that as this thing moved swiftly down the staircase, that some of the pictures swung, and others flew off the wall and crashed to the floor. He then ran downstairs to our mother's room while we were both sleeping to wake her up. She told him to see himself surrounded in white light and to say the universal word for higher power, which is Om, over and over. He said that he didn't want to leave her room, so he made a spot and laid on the floor next to Mum's bed, but couldn't sleep a wink that night. He told me that so many times things would fly across the room at you, cabinets left open, or at times rattled. He said that this one time he was sitting in the living room and a cat figurine jumped off the mantel and hit him hard on the head. They all said that this had been almost an everyday occurrence without notice. Everyone also thought that there was something off about our sister Charity. She stayed in that cold attic with Rachel, and Rachel said that it was creepy. Charity started isolating herself from everyone, wanting to be alone. She found a crawl space in the walls and would play in there with her many mice for hours at a time. She'd go outside looking up at the trees and hold conversations. She felt like the leaves were answering her. When all the kids walked to school, she never wanted to make that long walk on the country road with her siblings, but preferred to walk alone. She told me that lots of the time in the house, it felt as if her memories were shrouded by fog, like she was there but not there at the same time. Charity shared with me that she wished I hadn't asked her about those times, because she'd almost forgotten about that house completely. She said that it might have been possible that something was wanting her to be alone. She was only 12. Our mother did everything in her power to cleanse the house. Salt in the corners, sage, incense, priests, and even high-ranking people in the occult. Everyone was always hopeful for a while, but it seemed like every time there was a cleansing, it was shorter between the time of the next occurrence. She was always doing things to make extra money. At one point, she sold wigs for a bit. It went quite well in the 60s. She would hold wig parties at the house. And this was the time Charity said she felt closest to our mother. Charity would style the wigs for her, and when they were sold, she was so proud. It was their special thing together. Well, at one of these parties, Charity was upstairs in the attic with her mice. She took such good care of them. After all, they were her only friends. So she took one of them out of the cage and set him on the table in front of her. She said all she did was turn her head and tilt down to pick up something on the floor next to the chair, and not a moment passed and her mouse had disappeared off the table. She said she didn't even have time to search before she heard screams coming from the living room 2 flights down. She said her mum was furious with her. She was telling her to come downstairs immediately. After she arrived, she was stunned at what she was looking at. There was her mouse, the one that was upstairs on the table not even 2 minutes ago. She knew it wasn't even enough time for him to get down 2 flights of steps and end up on the top of the wig box in front of Mother's potential customers. Oh, Mum was mad. All of those ladies left after freaking out screaming. That was a big deal back then. Word of mouth was everything, and that was a big tarnish on our mother. Mum never disciplined us like other parents. We were all well behaved because she worked so hard for us that we didn't want to disappoint her. And needless to say, Charity was crushed by this. Later, Charity had one of her mice that had babies in a secure, locked cage with no possible way in or out. Later that night in the early hours, a wild rat came out of the walls and made its way into the locked cage and massacred the mother, along with all her babies. She loved them so much. She felt like whatever was in that house was doing this because the lock on the cage was just laying there. And after what happened at Mum's wig party, she knew the cage was secure. She said that she too saw pictures fly off the walls, one even smashing on her head. She wanted to make it go away, so she said that she got our mother's book, the one with spells, but after trying to find something that would rid this thing, she said it was too confusing and put it back. Charity said that she was getting more irritated with the family every day and sharing a room with Rachel. She said that she was messy and wanted to have a space of her own, so she went downstairs into the unfinished part of the basement and put her bed between the wall and of course took her mice. She told me that she didn't last long down there because she saw things that frightened her. She went on to describe that they were shadows, light-colored shadows taunting her, so she ran upstairs and slept on the couch. All of these events, plus more things that Mum experienced on her own, prompted her to find a highly recommended priest to come exorcise the house once and for all. He was there for a while, as my family stayed outside. But when he came out, he looked pale and told our mother she should move immediately. He said that it wasn't going to leave, and that she should sell the house. I stayed outside with my sister, but when they went inside the house to grab our things, they said that it was right out of a scary movie. Things were broken and tossed. Clearly it was angry. My siblings said that they were walking down the hall and pictures flew off the wall at them, and they all ran. We took only our clothes and went to a motel. We soon moved into an apartment and sent for the rest of our things. My mother found out that originally the house was donated to a church many years prior. There had been 2 priests being housed there, and they had their offices set up there as well. After a few missed events, they were checked on, only to find their decomposing bodies upstairs in the attic, both with their throats slashed and demonic writing on the wall in the priest's blood. The killings were thought to be cult-related. Mum said the place was sold 5 times in 2 years before we even got it and moved in. I'm not exactly curious why. When I was 7, I was playing pool in my grandparents' attic. Unlike a lot of stories that start this way, this wasn't a dark, dusty or creepy attic. My grandparents were wealthy, and the attic had been fully renovated. Polished wood floors, skylights, a minibar, a pool table, and even a small lounge area. It was more like a cozy game room than an attic. It was midday and I was just playing pool. The sunlight filtered through the skylight and small attic windows, spilling across the table and faintly into the narrow hallway that led to a few storage rooms. The light didn't reach far though. The end of the hallway was always dim. I glanced down the hallway and saw something black moving. At first, I thought it might have been my grandparents' cat. He startled me a bunch of times before, but this wasn't the cat, it moved differently. As I focused, I realized it had the shape of a person. It looked like it was leaning out of one of the storage room doors on the right side of the hall, but the way it leaned was wrong. You know how in cartoons a character peeks around a corner so you can only see their head, torso and one arm, but the rest of them of course stays hidden behind a wall? That's what it looked like. It had a large, perfectly round head, like a cartoon character's, almost like Kailu. No ears, no hair, but a smooth, overall, oversized head. It tilted its head slowly up and down, almost like it was curious and studying me. Then it began to lower itself towards the floor. The whole time there wasn't a single sound. Once it reached the floor, it began crawling towards me very slowly, its long black fingers stretched out in front of it. As it moved, they seemed to grow longer and longer. I realized it didn't have legs at all, just those endless black arms dragging its body forward. As it crawled, a thick black smoke started spreading across the attic floor. It wasn't just dark, it was darker than the shadows themselves. A pitch black fog that crept outwards from the thing's body, filling the hallway until I could barely see where it ended and the smoke began. That's when I screamed. I bolted down the narrow attic stairs and told my grandma what I saw. She came up with me and opened the door I said it came from. Inside was a cramped storage room with wooden boxes, beams, and a few old suitcases. The only thing on the floor was a dusty basketball. I tried to convince myself that's what I'd seen, but I know it didn't make sense. 2 years later it happened again, in the same attic while playing on the same pool table, and with the same feeling. I looked over and saw movement behind the door, just a glimpse of that round head and shifting shadow. And that was it for me. I never went back up to that attic again after that. My husband and I bought this old farmhouse about 6 months ago. It had been sitting on the market for 6 years. The previous owner was an 82-year-old man who moved in with his kids, and they just wanted the place off their hands, mainly because the property taxes were ridiculous. It was a great deal though, and my husband's side of the family has a ton of handymen, plumbers, electricians, etc. so we knew we could just take on whatever work it needed. Structurally, the place was in good shape. It just needed some cosmetic work, nothing too crazy. So I started by removing the wallpaper in one of the downstairs rooms. It was ancient, yellowed and peeling. I peeled off a section and noticed something weird behind it. Brick. I thought maybe it was just a patch job, but the more I stripped off, the more it looked like a bricked-up doorway. I called my husband, and of course he got excited like it was some kind of buried treasure. He knocked a hole through the brick and confirmed it was hollow behind, and we made a large enough hole to crawl through. What we found was a narrow, old staircase leading up to a room we didn't even know existed. Some kind of attic. And it was furnished. There was a child-sized bed with really old linens, a wooden rocking chair, and a dresser with a broken mirror. Everything was covered in dust, but not like the room had been abandoned forever, more like someone left it exactly as it was and then sealed it off. On the dresser, there was a small wooden box. Inside were a cracked marble, a rusted key, and a black and white photo of a girl standing in front of the same house. The back said, Emily, 1932. We brought the box downstairs, and my husband was like, wow, this is such a cool find. But I didn't feel right about it. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like I had interrupted something. That night, at 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps above our bedroom. Our room is directly under that hidden attic room. These weren't house-settling sounds. They were deliberate footsteps like someone pacing. My husband was still asleep next to me, and when I woke him up, the sound stopped. He grabbed a flashlight and we went up together. The room was exactly the same, except the box we had brought down was back on the dresser and open. We'd left it closed. The key was still in there, but the photo was gone. Over the next week, stuff kept happening. The footsteps, the sound of the rocking chair moving. Once I went up and saw the mirror looked fogged up, like someone had breathed on it. But the worst thing, a few nights ago, I was almost asleep when I heard a voice right next to my ear, a whisper so close that it made me freeze. Where's my key? I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning I put the key back in the box, left it open and haven't touched it since. And ever since then everything's been quiet. We're still working on the house, we're still living here, but I don't go up to that room anymore. I won't even look up when I passed the stairwell. If you ever find a door that someone went through the trouble of sealing shut, maybe leave it that way. About 2 years ago, I was sleeping at my now ex's house. We stayed in the attic, and honestly nothing weird ever happened there before. I should mention that I had experienced paranormal stuff at my own home growing up, but this place always seemed normal. This night stuck with me like a scar. I woke up at exactly 3:27 a.m. I still don't know why. I checked on my ex. He was knocked out beside me, breathing peacefully. I rolled over, tried to go back to sleep, but the minutes dragged and I was wide awake. Then I heard footsteps. That wasn't unusual, since his parents sometimes got up to use the bathroom at night. At first I assumed it was his dad walking back to bed. Then the sound shifted. The footsteps climbed the stairs. We slept in the attic with no door. There was just a staircase leading up. The bathroom, though, was on the second floor right next to his parents' room. They never needed to take the stairs at night. That heavy, slow tread kept coming. My stomach dropped. His dad wouldn't come check on two 16-year-olds sleeping in the attic at 3 a.m. I glanced over again to make sure my ex was still next to me, and the footsteps suddenly stopped. I turned towards the stairs and saw a large shadow, standing at the top completely still, not breathing, but watching us. Panic kicked in. I tried shaking my ex, whispering his name, but he didn't move. I flipped around and buried my face towards the wall, eyes squeezed shut, heart racing. The footsteps came again, slow and deliberate, pacing the attic, back and forth. I lay there frozen for what felt like 20 minutes before everything went quiet. I didn't dare move until I heard my ex finally stir awake. I checked the time. It was 4 a.m. and I clung to him like my life depended on it. He asked what was wrong, but I couldn't speak a word until daylight. The next day, he told me he hadn't noticed anything since he was out cold. He also mentions his dad used to sleepwalk, but I know deep down it wasn't that. A few weeks later, we were on a sleep call. He was asleep, camera on, facing the wall, and I was half watching YouTube when I glanced at my phone. Something stood in the open part of the room. Something tall. I froze. I took a screenshot and sent it so he'd see it when he woke. He nearly lost his mind, and so did I. I saw the figure a few more times on camera until he eventually moved houses. Nothing ever happened in the new place, and honestly, thank God. I still think about that. I was awake, I saw what I saw, and if anyone has any explanation, I'd love to hear it. I was engaged to a woman for 4 years, whose family owns an old house from the 1960s here in Texas. It's only had 3 families living in it over the generations. The previous owner was an older woman we call Edith, who's a ghost that resides in the kitchen now, though the ones before Edith we don't know about. I walked into their house for the first time and immediately got hit by a barrage of different stimuli. Goosebumps, the smell of fresh baked goods, a cold chill down my spine, and the most overpowering of all was a sense of pain, accompanied with the feeling of heat, dizziness, and taste of ash in my mouth. My ex's mother noticed my face go white as I sat down looking through the living room, through to the dining room, and into the doorway of the kitchen. I saw what looked like a hand on the doorway, and when I was asked what was up, I pointed out the hand, just for it to be gone and all the cabinets being open. The family acted like everything was normal, and stuff like that happened all the time. So fast forward a year or so, and the fiancé's family leave to go to work out of state, and I move into the house with her. Moving in was interesting, as the house creaked and groaned while I was alone in a room, and I'd taste ash and smell either fresh baked goods or burning. I didn't know the source of the burning and the ash till one night I was in the house alone. I heard what sounded like small footprints in what was supposed to be the attic. The attic access was a small hall closet off the living room and across from the room we slept in. As the night continued, I started hearing more noises in the attic, but thought it was just an animal, and oh boy was I wrong. It's about 3 a.m., and I hear a child's giggle come from the hall closet. I immediately unlocked the 3 locks they had on the door and looked inside, finding nothing but old blankets, fans, and school bags, and the steep stairs leading up to the attic. So being a curious person, I pull stuff out the way and head up. The second I touched the stairs, I could only smell burn and taste ash. My body started feeling warmer with each step, and once at the top, I saw an extra bedroom and bathroom, blackened and charred, and all the furniture and items were left up there. The place looked like it had seen an intense fire of the old children's toys, which remained burnt, sitting on beds. After looking around a bit, I started having a seriously hard time breathing. I turned to leave, when I see a small white face almost featureless in the stairway. I blink, and it's gone. I head to the stairs and hear giggles and running behind me. I stumble down the stairs fast and slam the door as I feel something hit against it once before I get it latched. I went to sit down and catch my breath, and slowly but surely the ash taste was replaced with sweet, and the smell began to change from burning to fresh cookies. After I catch my breath, I head to the kitchen to drink, and when I turn around from the fridge to the cabinets, they're all open. The dishes in the cabinets sound like they were shaking against each other before stopping as I heard the stovetop burners click on. I start backing out of the kitchen, turning as I see an old woman sitting in the living room smiling, before she disappears. After telling the family, they said I should have stayed out the attic and that I need to be more careful. After the family went back to work out of state, I came back to the house and tried cleansing it of all the negativity. But alas, it still persists. This happened more than 20 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. When I was 18, all I wanted to do was party. So when the opportunity presented itself to house sit with my girlfriend at the time in exchange for free booze and weed, I jumped at it, figuring it would be a week of free fun with my lady. Boy, was I wrong. I'm from New York City, and not at all familiar with Staten Island. I can count on one hand how many times I've been there, but one of those few times will never leave me. My girlfriend had a stepfather who raised her and stayed in close contact even after he and her mother broke up. He had recently purchased a new home with his fiancée, and he was traveling to Norway to marry her in her native country. He invited my girlfriend to stay at his home for a week of free booze, food, and weed, so long as they didn't burn the place down. My girlfriend immediately agreed on the condition that I could come along. He had no problem with that. What I didn't know was that he also invited all of my girlfriend's siblings and their partners, and by the time we arrived, the house was packed, and all rooms were taken except for the attic. The attic had a doorway entrance with no door, just a staircase leading up to the loft area with a window and a full-size bed pushed against the wall. Not the ideal space to be alone with your girlfriend, but since we got there after everyone else, we had no choice. We went back downstairs and joined the party. Everyone partied late into the night and early morning, and once everything died down, my girlfriend and I went up to the attic. She immediately crawled into bed and knocked out quickly, lying on the outer side of the bed with her body closer to the open room. I laid down on the inside part closer to the wall. She was facing me with her back to the open room. For whatever reason, I was having a tough time falling asleep. I started scanning the room over my girlfriend's shoulder. There was a window with a street light shining in. As I looked around, I noticed a dark mass starting to form in front of the window with the light shining behind it. This dark mass quickly took shape. It formed into the silhouette of a girl with long, wavy hair smirking back at me. I stared as long as I could, but eventually got freaked and shifted my gaze to my girlfriend's face and body. That's when it got terrifying. As I looked at her, I saw a long, skinny, very feminine hand with long expressive fingers and nails, walking its way along the outline of her shoulder and torso. I felt like this thing knew I was scared and was toying with me, like it knew I didn't want to look, but also knew exactly where my eyes were, and decided to show me that it was aware of me. I felt like I couldn't avoid its presence no matter how much I wanted to. At that point, I just closed my eyes and refused to open them until I finally fell asleep. The next morning, I immediately told my girlfriend what had happened. She was freaked out and told me to share the story with her siblings. When I did, they all went quiet and gave each other that "I told you so" look. I asked what that was about, thinking they didn't believe me. But I was wrong. They told me they had all avoided that attic on purpose, because a week earlier their brother had visited and experienced something strange there. They also said their stepfather had mentioned seeing things in the past. I was pissed, because had I known any of that, I would have never gone up there. I live in a one-story house with my parents, my older brother and at the time a dog. My room was on the first floor right next to the stairs. My brother had the attic bedroom, and to get to it he had to go through my room. There was no other way to get in or out of the attic, so I always knew when he was home. My parents had their room next to mine, so again I knew when they were there, especially because I could hear 2 doors open. I was about 8 when this happened. My grandma, who also lived in the house downstairs, died when I was 7, so we renovated the whole downstairs part. After everything was finished, one night I went to bed, and at around midnight I started hearing footsteps going up the stairs. At the top of the stairs there are 2 doors, one to my room and one to the living room. I heard something going up, waiting at the top for a few moments. Then, most of the time, going back down. I was terrified. I thought it was a one and done kind of thing and I just sleep it off. But the next night it happened again, and again and again, and it kept on going for at least 2 years. So one night, I took all of my courage and opened the door while the steps were around the middle of the stairs. I was lying in bed when I heard it. I got up, went to the door, opened it, and the moment my hand reached the doorknob, the steps stopped. I looked and there was nothing. I started wondering what the hell it was. It couldn't be my brother, it couldn't be my parents. So my last thought was my dog, who always stayed down. However, we always locked the downstairs door because otherwise she'd come upstairs at night. The last time it happened, I remember the steps being very, very fast, like a dog running up the stairs. I never stood up so fast in my life and locked the door to my room. However, I didn't hear it go back down. I just waited and fell asleep at some point. I asked everyone if they'd ever heard or knew something about it, but no one ever did. To this day, I don't know what it was, and it still doesn't make sense to me at all. Does anyone have any idea what on earth it could have been? This was back in 2008. I was 8, and during Hurricane Ike, our apartment got destroyed. So we moved to Humble, Texas, a suburban part of a town in this little cul-de-sac. The house was 2 stories, a lot more spacious than we were used to since it was 6 of us kids. Although some of us had to share a room, I was glad that we had more than one bathroom. But our bathroom was down the hall, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night having to pee, and I'd have to walk in the pitch black. Some nights I'd wake my brothers up to come with me, since I was afraid of the dark, and he was 6 years older than me. But one night he didn't want to go with me, and I really had to pee, so I mustered enough courage to try and go alone. I opened the doors, looked to my right, where the hallway leads to the balcony and downstairs. Then I looked to the left, where the bathroom was, which was also right next to my sister's room. And right between the bathroom door and my sister's door, something all white was sitting there. I stood there for a good 5 seconds looking at it, not knowing what it was. But I knew I didn't want to bother it, so I didn't go that night, and I never told them what I saw. Time passes, and my sister would say she always hears kids playing with a ball in the hallway in the middle of the night. My mum summed it up to something in the attic, because every time we'd open it, something happened. And there was this one time, me, my brother and his friend were in the kitchen making hot dogs, and you know the foam that sits on top of the water whenever you cook it? The foam morphed into the devil face emoji. My brother's friend noticed and said, "Bro, that's creepy." It didn't bother me at the time as I was 8. My brother just laughed it off. There was also this one time I was at my friend's house, and I never really enjoyed going to the bathroom Anywhere besides my place, as I never felt comfortable. I needed peace whenever I went. His house was next to the cul-de-sac over, maybe 2 minutes walking distance from my place. So I went home and no one was there. I was also getting a bit hungry, so I decided to make a sandwich before I nuked my toilet. But I kept getting this strong feeling of something breathing down my neck, to the point I couldn't take it anymore. So I brought the sandwich with me to the bathroom to finish making it. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I know it's pretty disgusting. I put it in a napkin, and after I was finished, I sat there for a good 10 minutes, trying to work up the courage to leave. But that feeling of hairs on the back of my neck wouldn't go away. I said forget the sandwich, left it on the sink counter in the napkin, and took off back downstairs to my friend's house. We ended up moving due to plumbing issues to another house 5 minutes away, during the summer of my 5th grade year, and the house was no different. One night during Halloween week, you know how they play scary movie marathons on TV? I was watching Friday the 13th in my room, and I had this big white tiger I got from the aquarium sitting on a glass table in the corner. Its tail lifted up and flipped off the tiger. The tiger was laying on its stomach on all fours, and I have no idea how it happened. I didn't get scared until it happened. But I knew I shouldn't have been in that room to finish the movie, so I went to my parents' room to chill. My sister continued to experience stuff. She said there was a 3-headed man looking through her window. Mind you, her room is on the 2nd floor. We also had my niece with us for a little while. She was 4 to 5 at the time. One day I got home from school and she was laying down on the floor coloring. So I laid next to her and she said, "Leave me alone." I said, "I didn't even do anything." She said, "Not you, him right there." I looked at nothing, and once again felt like this isn't a place I should stay and sit, so I ran into the bathroom with my mum. That house was so cold when you exhaled, you could see smoke coming out your mouth. But the final straw was when an old man woke up my mum and screamed at her to get out. Within a week we were out. But like every other house in the area, it was haunted. All my friends either lived in that same cul-de-sac or the next one over. At my friend Chance's house one night, we all slept downstairs in the living room, and his stairs would creak like crazy. The way his stairs were set up, we were underneath them, but we would always see someone walking on them. His house was actually modeled in the same way as mine. His grandma was down there with us. We were the only 2 still awake watching TV. And you could hear someone slowly walking on the stairs. Me and his grandma just looked at each other and didn't say a word. Then at my friend Christopher's house, he had a rolled up air mattress in the upstairs game room. Once again we were watching scary stuff, Nightmare on Elm Street, and the air mattress rolled downstairs. We looked at each other and ran. Then at my friend Jason's house, I was downstairs with his sister-in-law whistling that old cowboy tune. You know, when it's a standoff and something upstairs was whistling the same thing back at me. She looked at me and said, "Did you hear that? Do it again." I did, and it did it again. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. It was a truly terrifying time. My dad died in July of 2022 at home. There's been quite a lot of instances since then that I can't explain at my dad's house. My sister still lives here full-time with her boyfriend. I moved out a few months ago and have a house about a mile away. I've always been prone to the paranormal, starting from when I was young. My current house is very haunted, and I see, hear, and feel things constantly. But I also feel my dad there as well, so feel safe. So for the backstory. While my dad was alive, but unwell, it was his last Father's Day here with us. Because he was sick and couldn't go anywhere or do much, I didn't know what to buy him apart from some comfy new outfits for him to chill in. But I wanted to gift him something special too. I decided to get a picture frame that holds 3 pictures. I printed one of me, one of him, and one of my sister. One of him and my sister, and one of our family dog. He loved the gift so much he cried, which he rarely ever did. After he passed 4 weeks later, we kept the pictures up of him, and I really loved them. At Christmas, my sister and boyfriend put them with a lot of my dad's ornaments in the attic to make room for Christmas decorations. My sister and her boyfriend have a tendency to be a bit lazy, and when it came to putting the decks away, they didn't bring anything back down. For months I begged them to get my dad's stuff, especially the pictures I got him. I'd go up and get it myself, but I'm too short to get the ladder, and also had no idea where they would be. The strange occurring thing that kept happening is when I stay here. In the middle of the night, the latch to the attic just drops open and bangs and wakes me up. Every time I go and look, it's the door just swinging open. I've asked my sister if this has ever happened, and she said it never did, while it was just her and her boyfriend. The first time this ever happened, it was my mum. She was dog sitting for them while they went on vacation, and she said that she experienced the same thing, and her initial thought was that it was my dad telling her something, but she didn't know what. As soon as she told me, my first thought was the pictures and my dad's things. It wasn't even a second guess sort of thing, it was just a natural instinct. I know it was my dad telling me to get them for him and take them to my place. It's just getting my sister's 6'5" boyfriend to get them, considering he was the one who put them up there, but also the only one who's able to get up there. I think the only strange thing about it is it never wakes my sister or boyfriend, and it's a loud bang when it hits the doorframe. I just wanted to share, and like I said, it's nothing scary. But I guess it's just another reason to believe that we are more than what we see, and there is more out there than we can comprehend. Funnily enough, before I went to sleep and before this happened, I was reading about people's proof for there not being life after death. I found myself really upset and sad reading people say you live, you die, imagining that once my amazing, kind and funny dad is gone, that I could never see him again. That broke me, and I cried myself to sleep, and woke up to the attic door banging against my doorframe. Maybe it was not just a way for him to say about the pictures, but also reassuring me that everything isn't as linear as one might think. My wife and I moved into a newly built house in a housing estate in the west of Ireland 5 years ago. It's a very bright modern home and has good overall energy. However, very early on I got creeped out when putting things in the closet/storage in the attic. The attic is fully converted into a bedroom with a full bathroom, and it was done at time of build. Proper stairs, dormer windows. It's not dark and is pretty spacious. The closet is right on the attic landing, so it's right in the center column of the house, meaning it's surrounded on all sides by other rooms, and it has no windows. Where I used to sit in my office, the closet was over my right shoulder, and I used to feel something touch my hair on that side. It was as if someone was flicking a single hair very lightly. After a few months of this, I moved my desk to the opposite side of the room, and now it happens over my left shoulder, a direct line from where the closet is behind me. No windows on that side of the room, no heaters, and it's always the same place. I've also heard talking. It's more like 3 conversations all layered on top of each other at once. It's only for a few seconds, and just whispered gibberish, and the second I turn it stops. I tried ignoring it until one night my wife said she felt like someone was watching her at night from our bedroom walk-in closet, which is right below the closet in the attic. It's fully surrounded by other rooms with no windows, but but she said she couldn't fall asleep with her back to it either. Another night, when I was going to bed, I noticed a shadow, or more like an absence of light or a void on the landing. I actually walked past it. When I turned to take a look around it, it stood up and swooped towards me and went over to me. It made me take a step back in a defensive reflex to it. At this point, my wife and I had been comparing our experiences regularly, and when I told her of this, she was really creeped out. She told me she never forgot that one night she woke up and something was at the foot of the bed. And when she sat up, it did the same thing, swooped towards her and upwards and disappeared. There have been other things happening too. We've heard the sound of our bedroom shutters opening when we were downstairs, that distinctive sound of the magnet opening and then folding and hitting the wall. I go to investigate, and they're closed with nothing out of place. Also, our shirts get 3 tiny holes in the same place that we can't explain. It started out that my wife's shirts would have 3 perfect holes in a triangle to the left center near the bottom. Not pierced holes, just perfectly tiny holes, always in a triangle, always the exact same shape and pattern. I thought it was something she was catching on at her work, or her car seat belt, or the washing machine. But then after 6 months it started happening to mine too. We've switched cars multiple times, and we obviously don't wear the same belts. I've checked the kitchen counters for something that we might catch onto when doing food prep or washing up, but there's nothing. No idea what's causing it. My wife sometimes gets bruises on her arms and legs, not just in the morning. She'll notice a huge bruise form while we're sitting watching TV that wasn't there an hour before. A few nights ago I saw it again, just in a ball in the corner, but only visible when I wasn't looking directly at it. It used to be concentrated in the center column of the house, but now it's on the side of my room, which has never happened before. We're reluctant to try and get rid of it in case it should get worse. Should we? It's not an evil feeling, but weird. The void figure is showing up more often now. Should we be concerned? When I was 8 years old, we moved from our first home to a cheaper rental. While the other house had been modern, this one was older. I liked the sense of history about it, and many other aspects of that place. The only downside seemed to be that it was always cold, even when it seemed as if it shouldn't be. Granted, this was partially because of the high ceilings, I can't deny that, but it also had long windows to let in the sunlight. I still remember the red steps with their gold edgings, on the main stair leading up to the landing, the ugly, flat, grey carpet in the halls, the blue carpet in my bedroom, the white walls and wooden frames on doors and windows. Towards the front of the house was my room on one side, and the staircase leading to the attic directly across from it. Everything looked so beautiful to my child self when we were checking out the place. After all the fighting over financial burdens which my parents had done at the previous house, it felt like things were finally looking up for the family. The attic became my playroom. For the most part, it was a quaint old room with peeling wallpaper and a floor-leveled window up front that I would spend hours beside watching the street below. I would read, play games, and otherwise amuse myself. The only weird spot in that attic, one which I learned to avoid for its weirdness and forgot about as the months passed, was this tiny back room. Strangely, it held an old bed with a rust-colored stain on it. An aged, frayed, cut noose hung from the rafters by the foot of the bed. I don't recall any other object in that room, though they might have been there. I only remember those because they seemed to carry such ominous significance. Sometimes I felt like the place we lived now was kind of creepy, but there was this odd feeling I had of protection, as if it was actually safe, and as if it only seemed as if it could be scary. The coldness wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't that bad. Some bubbles seemed to wrap around me, and I never felt too ill at ease. I'll never forget the night the bubble burst, though. At some point during the course of my sleep, I moved into a lucid dream of sorts. It was like a much darker, extremely terrifying version of a story I'd read, Where the Wild Things Are. I noticed the similarity somehow even in the dream, because it felt like a parody of something that I had felt comforting and fun in waking life. There I was in a jungle, black silhouettes of long leaves looming overhead, obscuring my view of a midnight blue sky. I don't remember any details besides that. Just running, chasing, panting in fear. Something was after me, but I wasn't aware of anything besides the danger. It was like I couldn't register one or multiple entities hunting me. I only knew that I had to run. I was so panicked that coherent thought wasn't possible for what seemed like a long time. I didn't choose to run. I was simply running. The fear drove me. I was somehow controlled by it despite knowing it wasn't real, knowing I shouldn't be. Somewhere along the way I became strangely aware that this had to be affecting me in the real world. My heart must be beating so incredibly fast. I couldn't exactly feel my heart, but it was like I was aware of it. I could sense its beating increasing over time. The fear intensified. It was like a normal nightmare where you get to the point when you die and then you wake up and instinctively know I wasn't going to. I couldn't, even though I knew I was dreaming. I became increasingly convinced on a visceral level that something wanted me to die and it was going to happen. I was being murdered in my sleep, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't even imagine or sense a true source of this danger. I was just mindlessly driven by that increasing fear, heightening the more sure I became that I would not survive to wake up tomorrow. I was powerless to fight what was happening. Then the strangest thing happened. Suddenly I felt my body again, and I don't mean my heartbeat. I became physically, if distantly aware of a tap on my arm, a strong one from a fairly large finger like a man's hand. In that moment, through my eyes saw nothing but the dream. I was no longer fully disconnected from all awareness of my body. From the instant of that touch, I was no longer afraid. The terror was absolutely gone. My heartbeat was back to normal, my breathing was back to normal, and I felt a sense of peace. I felt a second tap, the exact same strength, size, and position. This made me able to open my eyes and start seeing the world for what it was again. Had I left my touch lamp on, or did someone else turn it on? I didn't know. All I knew, I could see the room perfectly, and I was awake as I have ever been. And then I felt the third tap, now fully awake, with nothing in my peripheral vision. This is the part that really gets me. I was not disoriented, I was not still partially asleep. I was not imagining things or dreaming anything at all. That confused state of being jolted out of sleep is very familiar to me. I was entirely cognizant in a way you don't feel when you're just waking up. And yet, I felt that third, strong, physical tap again. Of course, the human mind is easy to confuse when its perceptions don't make sense. Sitting up, looking around even at the age of 8, I was instantly seeking rationalization to explain away why I was seeing nothing while feeling that touch. There was no one there. Surely that had to mean I had just fallen back asleep or something, after my dad had poked my arm to wake me from the nightmare. That was all I could think. I must have been confused. I told myself, even though I wasn't experiencing an actual sense of confusion or lost time. To confirm my belief, I went to my parents' room immediately. I disturbed them, groggy from a sound sleep, wanting them to tell me what had just happened. Dad woke me up a while ago, right? Hadn't he? They had no idea what the hell I was talking about, so I decided they too were out of it. I went back to bed and slept normally with that same sense of peace and safety. In the morning I asked again, "Wasn't it Dad who woke me up last night?" But neither of them had any idea what I was talking about. They were perfectly bewildered and a little concerned. It was only after looking back on those events, which were burnt into my mind due to the abrupt shift between deathly terror and absolute peace, that I came to feel certain I had experienced something other than a simple nightmare. After examining every type of parasomnia of which Google seemed aware, I found only the barest correlation between my experience and those phenomena. So much does not fit with sleep paralysis. For instance, the fact that I was not paralyzed. Once my eyes opened up, I could move, and I did not hallucinate anything like the shadow figure people tend to see, nor did I feel any fear or dread, or with any of the many nightmares I had before and since. Bizarre and unique, though nightmares may often be, they have always followed established patterns for me, except for this experience. When we moved out, I was 16, but the feeling of peace in that house remained, albeit alongside a melancholy air. The next house, a renovated one, never carried that sense of underlying menace of the rental, a menace of which I had repressed awareness until the night that menace seemed to make its attack, and then be banished or conquered. My close friend lives in Manchester, UK. I don't see him a lot because he lives in a different country. He has a small house in an area surrounded by plain fields. I visited him just a few days ago. He has a 4-year-old son. It was around 5 p.m. and we were chatting, when all of a sudden we heard noises from the kitchen which we ignored. My friend said that these noises came from the attic and said they were common. We had invited some other friends from Liverpool over, and they reached us at around 7 to 8 p.m. We cooked food and chatted. They left the house at midnight. My friend only had one bedroom where he and his son slept, so gave me a storeroom converted into a temporary bedroom. I didn't get any sleep, so I scrolled through shorts and other stuff. I could hear noises coming from the kitchen and living room but ignored it. Then my friend knocked on the door and asked if I accidentally broke a vase which was in the living room. I said no, and then he went back to sleep. I woke up late, and his son said to him in very broken English that he saw Uncle and that he wasn't talking about me. My friend regularly used to see figures in the house, and when he told me that, I asked him if the house was haunted sarcastically. I used the washroom and saw a large, dark figure standing about 3 foot from me in the mirror. I was almost crapping myself. I told my friend about it and he just shrugged and said it was ordinary. He also said he had been attacked by something once but just tried to laugh it off. But then I took a walk, and when I came back, he said that some utensils were thrown from the kitchen straight into the living room. And that's the moment where I seriously told him to get help. He looked up the history of the house. It was owned by his great-great-grandfather, whose life was taken at the hand of his cousin at the young age of 29. We don't know what to do. I think there's something very scary going on in this house. Tonight, my fiancé and I were able to tour a haunted asylum. After a brief history of the place given by a guide, we were permitted to walk around all 4 floors of the asylum for as long as you'd like. Everything was going great, and I got some neat pictures of an original electrotherapy chair and stuff like that. In the attic floor, there's a room at the very end that is extremely large, and it was set up with a ton of candles and these little memorial obituaries printed out. On the right there's a tiny crawl space. I wouldn't have been able to fit there, nor would my fiancé or any regular-sized adult. I went into the room with my fiancé, and there was another, smaller room off to the left side. He goes into that room to check it out. At this point, I'm extremely interested in the obituaries, and I'm reading them out loud. In about 3 minutes or so, he comes back, and I'm still reading these obituaries to him now that he's back. The air starts to feel really heavy, and the more I read, the more tense I feel. At this point, we both had our back to the crawl space, Something like a pebble is thrown from the crawl space and hits the opposite wall. I look at my fiancé and turn towards the crawl space. Another larger piece of brick flies out and hits the wall. I'm freaked at this point and turn to leave the room. My fiancé is walking in front of me with his flashlight, but as soon as I get out the room I hear scraping followed by footsteps. I look at my fiancé and he nods, saying he heard it too. I turn around and wait and see if someone is coming out the room. The noise stops, but there's no one there. We hightail it out of there and go down the ground floor and head outside the asylum. We're both excited and freaked out that we had an experience. The atmosphere was so heavy when we got outside. It felt like every muscle in my body was tensed. I took some time and we headed home after a while. This wasn't the only thing to happen though. When we were taking pictures of objects like chairs and such, my phone kept refusing to take pictures, stating that subject wasn't standing close enough to the camera. It kept doing that autofocus thing where it finds faces, and it was just focusing on the air above the chair where a face would be. It was fun, but I'm thoroughly freaked now.